Todd is second. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Rectilineo is P2. Todd in Rectilineo is P2. The qualification session is at Autodromo del Mugello in Scarperia, Italy. Todd from New Zealand is first. The race dictator from New Zealand in Rectilineo is P1. That Canadian guy from Canada in Rectilineo is P6. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Borgo San Lorenzo is third. Dave B. Racing from South Africa is P2. That Canadian guy is P6. The race dictator in Rectilineo is first. The race dictator is up 8.12 in Borgo San Lorenzo. The race dictator is up 8.88 in Scarperia. race dictator is up 9.47 in Buccine. The race dictator improved is first with a 125.314. Dave B Racing in Rettilineo is second. Dave B Racing improved is second with a 128.353. 3.039 off pole. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Rettilineo is fourth. Johnny Prince improved is P4 with a 129.336. 4.022 off pole. The race dictator in Savelli is P1 up 0.26. The race dictator is up 0.59 in Corintaio. The race dictator is up 0.74 in Rettilineo. The race dictator is provisional pole with a 124.545. Dave B Racing from South Africa is P4 up 0.71. Dave B Racing improved is P4 with a 127.650. 3.105 off pole. Chris Butt from New Zealand in Buccine is P6 up 5.68. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Chris Butt improved his fifth with a 128.946. 4.401 off pole. That Canadian guy in San Donato is third up 0.18. Dave B Racing is fourth up 0.30. Chris Butt in Materassi is fifth up 0.61. Best lap is a 128.946. 4.401 off pole. Dave B Racing is fourth up 0.21. Dave B Racing is up 1.02 in Rettilineo. Dave B Racing improved is third with a 126.465. 1.920 off pole. That Canadian guy in Buccine is fourth up 0.10. That Canadian guy improved his P3 with a 126.455. 1.910 off pole. Todd in Savelli is second. Best lap is a 125.152. 0.607 off pole. Todd is up 0.15 in Pelagio. Todd is up 0.31 in Rettilineo. Todd improved his second with a 124.757. 0.212 off pole. Chris Braddock in Pelagio is P5 up 1.34. Chris Braddock is up 1.12 in Red Pilaneo. Chris Braddock improved his P5 with a 127.801. 3.256 off pole. The race dictator is P1 up 0.36. The race dictator is provisional pole with a 124.135. That Canadian guy in Scarperia is third up 0.11. That Canadian guy is up 0.23 in Buccine. That Canadian guy improved his third with a 126.235. 2.100 off pole. That Canadian guy is up 0.15 in San Donato. Johnny Prince is P6. Johnny Prince improved his sixth with a 128.799. 4.664 off pole. Johnny Prince is up 0.04 in Lakota. The qualifying session is now in overtime. That Canadian guy is P3. That Canadian guy is up 0.41 in Casanova. That Canadian guy is up 0.31 in Quarantine. That Canadian guy is up 0.05 in Red Pilaneo. That Canadian guy improved his P3 with a 126.157. 2.022 off pole. Broadcast bot is 20th. The race session is at Autodromo del Mugello in Scarperia, Italy. The race dictator from New Zealand is first. Todd from New Zealand is P2. 40 minutes remaining in the session restart. Todd is now P5. The race dictator in San Donato is P2. The race dictator is now first. Todd is third. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Savelli is fourth. in Scarperia is third. Johnny Prince in Corintaio is P4. Dave B Racing from South Africa in Rectilineo is third. Johnny Prince in San Donato is P4, 1.0 behind Dave B Racing. Johnny Prince lost fourth to that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy from Canada is P4. Best lap is a 1:42.745. 9.057 off the fastest lap. Dave B Racing in Scarperia is third, 1.9 ahead of that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing lost third to that Canadian guy. Chris Ruddock from New Zealand is P5, 0.9 behind Dave B Racing. Todd in Rectilineo is second. Best lap is a 1:38.509. 4.821 off the fastest lap. Chris Ruddock in Rectilineo is P5, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. Todd in Rectilineo is P2, 0.5 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy in the hill on lap 3 is P3, 0.2 ahead of Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy was 11.3 faster last lap. Todd is second, 0.3 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy in Arrabiata 2 on lap 3 is P3, 0.7 behind Todd. Todd in Corintaio on lap 3 is second, 0.7 behind the race dictator. Todd was 3.7 faster last lap. Dave B Racing is P5, 0.8 behind Chris Ruddock. Dave B Racing is now P4. 35 minutes remaining in the session. Todd in Rectilineo is P2, 1.0 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing is P4, 1.6 behind Chris Ruddock. Chris Ruddock was 1.8 faster last lap. That Canadian guy in Casanova is fifth, 2.1 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Pelagio is 4th. Best lap is a 140.302. 8.520 off the fastest lap. That Canadian guy is 5th. 0.8 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy passed Dave B Racing for P4. Dave B Racing in Buccine is P6, 3.0 behind Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy is P4, 3.0 behind Chris Bennett. Todd is P2, 1.9 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Arrabbiata 2 is P6, 0.9 behind Johnny Prince. Todd in Rettilineo is P2, 1.7 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Buccine is 6th, 0.8 behind Johnny Prince. Todd is P2, 2.1 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Borgo San Lorenzo is P6, 0.3 behind Johnny Prince. Todd in Buccine is 2nd, 2.4 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy in Buccine is 4th. Todd in Borgo San Lorenzo is 2nd, 3.2 behind the race dictator. 30 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy in Borgo San Lorenzo is 4th. Dave B Racing in Savelli is 5th. Chris Budd is 3rd, 1.3 behind Todd. Todd in Puccine is P2, 0.7 ahead of Chris Budd. Chris Budd in Puccine is third, 0.4 behind Todd. That Canadian guy in Rettilineo is P4, 0.4 behind Chris Budd. Todd in Rettilineo is second. Best lap is a 1:26.193. 1.062 off the fastest lap. That Canadian guy is second, 0.1 ahead of Tom. That Canadian guy lost P3 to Chris Budd. Todd is second, 0.4 ahead of Chris Budd. Chris Budd in Savelli is P3, 0.7 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Scarperia is fourth, 0.4 behind Chris Budd. Dave B Racing passed Chris Budd for P3. Chris Budd in Corintaio is fourth, 0.8 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy in Diondetti is P6, 0.7 behind Johnny Prince. Dave B Racing in San Donato is third, 0.6 ahead of Chris Budd. Dave B Racing was 1.3 faster last lap. Chris Budd on lap 9 is P4, 1.0 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Savelli is third, 0.5 behind Todd. Chris Budd in Pelagio is fourth. Best lap is a 1:28.700. 3.569 off the fastest lap. Dave B Racing is third, 0.5 behind Todd. "25 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is P6, 1.2 behind Johnny Prince. Dave B Racing is third, 1.0 behind Todd. That Canadian guy in Poggio Seco is sixth, 0.6 behind Johnny Prince. Chris Budd in Pelagio is fourth, 2.4 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy on lap 10 is P6, 0.8 behind Johnny Prince. Chris Budd in Rectilineo is 4th, 2.7 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy in Rectilineo is P6, 0.3 behind Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy passed Johnny Prince for P5. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Pagio Seco is P6, 1.6 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 0.7 faster last lap. Todd in Corintaio is P2, 3.8 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince on lap 11 is P5, 2.1 behind that Canadian guy. Todd in Laco is 2nd. Best lap is a 1:26.093. 0.962 off the fastest lap. Johnny Prince in San Donato is 5th, 2.7 behind that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince passed that Canadian guy for P4. That Canadian guy is P5. That Canadian guy lost P5 to Dave B Racing. Johnny Prince is 4th, 3.3 behind Chris Budd. Todd in San Donato is 2nd, 2.9 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince in Rectilineo is 4th, 2.1 behind Chris Budd. Minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is 6th, 1.3 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator in Corintaio is 1st. Best lap is a 1:25.131. Dave B Racing on lap 13 is 5th, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing exiting pits. That Canadian guy exiting pits. That Canadian guy from Canada in San Donato is P6, 0.6 behind Dave B Racing. Race dictator exiting pits. Johnny Prince in Buccine is 4th, 1.8 behind Chris Budd. Johnny Prince passed Chris Budd for 3rd. Todd in Arrabbiata 1 is P1. Chris Budd exiting pits. The race dictator in Arrabbiata 1 is P2. Johnny Prince in Scarperia is 3rd. The race dictator is 2nd, 1.0 behind Todd. Johnny Prince in Buccine is P3, 1.0 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing is 6th. Todd exiting pits. Chris Budd in Rettilineo is 4th, 2.9 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince exiting pits. Todd is P3, 2.6 ahead of Chris Budd. Todd is now 2nd. Dave B Racing in Buccine is P6. The race dictator in San Donato is 1st. Todd is P2, 0.4 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3, 0.3 behind Todd. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Todd is 2nd, 1.0 behind the race dictator. Chris Budd from New Zealand in Scarperia is P4, 0.2 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Correntallo is 5th, 0.4 behind Chris Budd. Chris Budd in Buccine is P4, 0.2 ahead of Dave B Racing. Chris Bunnett lost P4 to Dave B Racing. Todd Inlico on lap 16 is P2, 1.3 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Borgo San Lorenzo on lap 16 is P4, 0.5 behind Johnny Prince. Todd in Scarperia is P2, 1.5 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Corintayo is P4, 0.7 behind Johnny Prince. Todd from New Zealand in Bucine is P2, 0.8 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing in Rettilineo is 4th, 0.3 behind Johnny Prince. Dave B Racing passed Johnny Prince for P3. Todd is 2nd, 0.8 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy is 6th, 1.3 behind Chris Bunnett. Todd from New Zealand in Corintayo is 2nd, 1.4 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy is P6, 0.8 behind Chris Bunnett. Todd in San Donato is 2nd, 1.0 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy in San Donato is P6, 0.3 behind Chris Bunnett. Todd in Arrabbiata 2 is 2nd, 1.5 behind the race dictator. Todd passed the race dictator for P1. That Canadian guy in Arrabbiata 2 is 6th, 1.9 behind Johnny Prince. 10 minutes remaining in the session. The race dictator in Bucine is P3, 2.1 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Rettilineo is P3, 0.5 behind the race dictator. The race dictator was 0.6 faster last lap. The race dictator in Rettilineo is 2nd, 0.5 behind Todd. Dave B Racing is 3rd battling Chris Bunnett. 0.4 behind Todd. Todd was 1.9 faster last lap. Dave B Racing in Seville lead is third, 0.5 ahead of Chris Budd. That Canadian guy is fifth, 0.7 behind Chris Budd. Dave B Racing in Correntillo is P3, 0.6 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Rectilineo is second, 0.9 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is third, 1.0 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Casanova is P2, 1.5 behind Todd. That Canadian guy in Scarperia is P3. The race dictator in Buccine is second, 1.3 behind Todd. Todd was 0.6 faster last lap. Johnny Prince in Rectilineo on lap 20 is fourth, 4.4 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator in Borgo San Lorenzo is second, 1.4 behind Todd. Dave B Racing in Casanova is fifth, 4.8 behind Johnny Prince. The race dictator in Correntillo is P2, 0.9 behind Todd. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince in Buccine is fourth, 4.2 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator in Lecco is P2, 1.0 behind Todd. Johnny Prince in Poggio Seco is P4. The race dictator in Scarperia is second, 0.8 behind Todd. That Canadian guy in Corintayo is P3. The race dictator in Rectilineo is second, 0.9 behind Todd. Johnny Prince in Rectilineo is P4. The race dictator in Casanova is P2, 0.9 behind Todd. Johnny Prince in Savelli is P4. The race dictator from New Zealand in Buchine is second, 1.7 behind Todd. Dave B Racing in Corintayo is fifth. Best lap is a 1:27.308. 2.479 off the fastest lap. The race dictator in Borgo San Lorenzo is P2, 3.2 behind Todd. Dave B Racing in Poggio Seco is fifth. The race dictator in Biondetti is P2, 4.1 behind Todd. Dave B Racing is P5. Dave B Racing passed Johnny Prince for P4. Johnny Prince is P5. The race dictator in Savelli is P2. Best lap is a 1:24.829. That Canadian guy in Arrabbiata 2 is third. Best lap is a 1:26.315. 1.486 off the fastest lap. The race dictator is P2. Todd in Buchine is first, 0.6 ahead of the race dictator. The leader has just finished the race. Todd finished P1. The race dictator finished P2. That Canadian guy is P3. That Canadian guy finished third. Dave B Racing is fourth. Dave B Racing finished P4. Johnny Prince is 5th. Johnny Prince finished P5. Chris Butt is P6. Broadcast Bot is 7th.